Welcome to what we're calling the isolation series in another line of podcasts that we are just getting guests on. We're telling their stories and we are talking all things around sport, health, fitness, well-being, and just generally just kind of putting the worlds to right. Today, I am very excited to have Mica Moore. Mica is an international sprinter. She is an Olympic British women's bobsleigher. She competed for Wales in the 4x100 metres relay in Glasgow at the 2014 Commonwealth Games and competed for Team GB in the two-woman bobsleigh event, where I believe they took the best ever performance by a British women's Olympic bobsleigh team. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. I'm glad you didn't ask me what place we came, because I always get confused and I say the wrong number. So
Right, okay.
yeah, that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, well, we'll just go with that. We'll just go with that. Are you all okay though?
Yes, good, thank you.
Amazing. How are you finding life in lockdown?
When it first happened, it was quite overwhelming, I thought, because like my normal day-to-day job, I'm out and about quite a lot, and I work in sales and I travel all over the lower part of the country, so I'm always sort of on my feet. And then obviously with a lot of training in the evenings, I get to sort of get rid of my energy that way as well. So being locked up into my little 2-bedroom house is very overwhelming. But we had some very nice people donate some training kit for us to be able to use here, and so I'm being able to do that in my car park, which I'm sure my neighbours love. But no, it's not too bad. It's not as bad as it could be.
So are you very much kind of in well, before isolation life, are you very much in full swing of training, or is it kind of taking a step back? What's it looking like at the moment?
Oh no, definitely we were into that full swing of things. I just maybe finished indoors around middle of February time, or coming up to the end of February, and I had about 4 days off, and then I got back into training again. So we were starting to do some longer reps and just get that work into the legs before outdoor season. So I had probably about 8 weeks before I was going to compete, but it's sort of taken a change now. But very luckily, I'd done some saving. I've always sort of wanted a home gym, so I had done some saving. So I saved up and I bought a curve the other day, which was probably a little bit of a big splurge, but it's come in handy while we're here, because I do suffer from sort of like Achilles problems and things. So running on roads maybe isn't the best thing for me to do at the moment. So I thought, you know, buy it and think about it later.
Amazing. Well, have you managed to are you managing to kind of keep sane? Are you managed to just kind of maintain the level of volume and intensity that you would have liked to, or how's that all going?
I think I'm managing to get it all in. There's little sort of accessory things that maybe I wouldn't be able to do, like, I don't know, at Nyack where I train, we have like a med wall where you can do slams against the wall. I can't necessarily do that against my house, just in case it crumbles. But everything else, I think we found a way of getting around it. Like, I mean, my partner's got a camper van, and it's got, I don't know, like a little thing on the back that you can hook things onto. So I hooked an elastic band onto there and did hamstring curls. And It's actually really fun to like come up with new ways of doing things. So it is a nice challenging time, I guess, and it's challenging your mind and sort of revamping training a little bit and making it exciting. But I guess we're very lucky at the minute. We've had some nice weather, so it makes it nicer, because when I was doing bobsleigh and you'd have to train out on the roads then in the cold, it's not as fun.
No, yeah, I can imagine. So so what we would love to do today, just for kind of the guys that are listening in, is obviously just tell your story and kind of go right back from the beginning, because I think that like there's definitely some things to be said, both from obviously your story as you kind of come through athletics, and then that transition to bobsleigh, and then obviously plans for the future as well. So going back to the beginning then, how, obviously you can tell from your accent you are Cardiff through and through. How how did you first get into athletics? What was the inspiration behind that? And yeah, and then anything else that you want to add to that?
Oh gosh. Well, I would say I sort of got into athletics relatively late. I think I started when I was just turning 15. But I'd always just been a sporty person. I'm an only child, so I guess my parents just wanted me to be like around other kids all the time, so they'd take me to lots of sports clubs. I did gymnastics and horse riding and hockey, and then as I was sort of turning 15 or 14, 15, I was going to youth club and I wasn't doing as much sport. And my mum and dad just weren't going to have any of that. So they just signed me up for Newport Harriers, which is the athletics club that was local to us, and took me down on a Tuesday night. And I wasn't happy about it at first because I was sort of missing out on fun with my friends. But then when I got there and realised how fun it was, and you could make friends there as well, it sort of just started there. And I suppose I just progressed really quickly. I think that I realised really quickly that athletics was sort of the sport for me, even though I'd done so many different sports. This was just something that I found came really natural to me, and it just, yeah, you just know when it's your sport.
Have you always been a sprinter?
Yeah, I've never run long distance. I think even when I was in school, I used to get my dad to write a note for me to say I couldn't do cross country. And I'd get him to sign it and say, "Oh, just tell them like I've got asthma or something." So it's always been sprinting. And I think the age that I'm at now, I am a little bit gutted that I never tried any other events. Like I would have loved to have done like a heptathlon or something like that, but no, I've never sort of had an interest in anything other than just the flat out sprints.
What's the furthest you've ever run, just out of interest, even in training?
It would probably be like a 350 maybe.
So
I've done
a casual 5K jog or anything like that?
No. I did once go. I went for a jog. Actually, that's a lie. I went for a jog. I think it was 2 years ago, and I can remember it because like tormented me to this day. And it was probably an 8-minute jog around my local area. And when I got back, I filmed myself breathing and sent it to my partner and said, "I think I'm dying." I was so out of breath. So yeah.
And so at what point did or how long into your kind of athletic journey did the kind of, I suppose, did it become a point where this is something that I'm actually quite good at, and then that obviously led to some international representation, or to some kind of more higher level competitions that you were able to qualify, or higher level meets that you were able to qualify for? How did that work?
I think throughout my athletics, I think very early on, I was competing for Wales, which Wales is a very small country, so I think that's something that a lot of people can achieve and can do. I think that the difficulty comes is then making senior teams, and I was making senior teams and being alongside girls who had been in the sport a long time, which was really cool to sort of have their guidance on things as well, and then you can realise what you can achieve with athletics with Wales. So I remember running alongside a girl called Elaine O'Neill, and she'd been to the Commonwealth Games, and that was sort of a point then when I realised, this is something that I'd like to sort of strive towards. So I guess, well, I mean, obviously the Commonwealth cycle is every 4 years, so I think probably in 2012 I was thinking about that Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, and thinking that that's something that I would like to go to. But I think at that time it was just sort of like a distant dream. I wanted to make the Commonwealth Games as an individual athlete, but I think that target was a little bit out of reach. So to go as part of the relay team and go with 4 other girls who were similar age to myself at the time was really cool, and it was a really good experience for us. And yeah, it was just like, and I think at that time, and going to the Commonwealth Games then, and just being part of that experience, to this day, I always, whenever anyone asks what is my favourite competition that I've ever been a part of or something, and most people probably think I'd say the Olympics, and obviously the Olympics is up there, but the Commonwealth Games is just amazing. And I think it's because I am from Cardiff and I am Welsh, and just putting on that Welsh vest, it's very rare that you get to do it on that sort of stage. So that is one of my favourite memories from within athletics, I guess.
And so how far, so what was the kind of the notice period before obviously the games in Glasgow that you got notified that you had been selected? How far in advance did you get told?
That's quite a good question. I think I can remember having the call, but I don't know how long before that was, because I know that we went out to a holding camp in Portugal. So it must have been a few weeks before that. But I wasn't on the long list for the games, so even in the build up to the games, I mean, there was other training camps that had happened that I wasn't a part of, and I sort of just carried on training with hope of getting as close to the target as possible, and hoping that I could make the games. So yeah, it must have been actually quite a short period out from that. I think I remember doing a competition before we left for Portugal, and I maybe knew then, but I remember when we went and picked up our kit, and it was the announcement day, and we'd had this call, and they said you can come down to Leckwith and we'll announce the team and the press will be there and everything. And I wasn't with my partner back then, but I walked up to Leckwith, and I remember Scott Simpson saying, "Don't tell anyone why you're going to Leckwith, it's very top secret." So I walked past Kurt, and I was like, "Oh hiya, what are you doing here?" And we were both like, "Oh, just popping by actually." Like, neither of us wanted to say why we were there, and then when we both got in the building, we were like, "Oh, you're here for that too." So but that was probably about, I would want to guess, at like a month or so before going out to Portugal, which was then, a 14-day camp or something like that.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
Amazing. And then I assume you did the whole athlete village life in the games and stuff like that?
Yes. Yeah, that again was an amazing part. I think everyone sort of says, "Oh, well, you went to Glasgow for the Commonwealth Games. It's not very exciting." But do you know what? The village was incredible. It's probably the best village that I've been in. They made it really, really homely. You knew that you were in the Welsh section when you got there, and we were between England and Australia. And you had like a dragon on the entrance, and it was just really nice. Yeah, and they had this massive games tent, food hall, everything you could imagine there. And what I really liked about it as well was, because I do like my food, that they had this little barbecue shack that you could just go and get barbecued meat, and you could choose what your meal was going to be for the day. But yeah, it was amazing. It was incredible there.
I've heard a lot of people say something very, very similar along how the Glasgow Games was something that was very well run for the most part, and then but also just in terms of like atmosphere in and around both the athlete village, and then obviously I suppose although it's not Wales, it's a home nation, and so to have that support was just I've only just heard that it was just nothing but insane.
Oh yeah, definitely. But whenever anyone, it didn't matter what sort of British vest you were wearing, whether it Welsh, Scottish, English, the crowd would just go wild, and I thought that was really cool. It just it really got you riled up for your race.
Amazing. And so within that, is it explaining athletics and stuff to the both to myself and the listeners, you would have had a qualifying race in the competition and made it through to the final, is that correct?
Yeah, so our time in Glasgow, although it was incredible, it was slightly stressful. So as a young team, we practiced so much for that relay. We did well over 1,000 practices. And when we got there and we found out our heat, we knew it was going to be difficult to make the final, but we also knew that we'd run really well that year, and we'd set a few national records, I think, in the run up to the games. But still, we knew that that wasn't the best that we could do. We knew we could go better. So we just needed to get the baton round, really, and hopefully that would get us into the final. So yeah, and it was Hannah Breyer on first leg, Hannah Thomas on second, to me on third, and Rachel Johncock on fourth. We had all our markings in place, everything was fine. We ran the race, and I'm not really sure what happened this day, but between myself and Hannah, there was a little bit of commotion. And I needed to slow down. So in a relay, obviously, you have the box where you have to change the baton over from yellow tick to yellow tick. It's about 22 meters, I think it is. I'd gotten to 15 meters, and I thought, okay, the baton's still not in my hand. So I got to 17 meters, and I thought, I really need to sort of put on my brakes now. I got to 19 meters, and I slammed my foot on the brakes and stopped within the box, and then the baton just went in my hand, and I ran again. Yeah. So we were fine. I knew we were fine. I'm not sure that Hannah knew we were fine at the time, but I got the baton to Rachel. Rachel ran, and we finished the race, and it was all, and you know, we just had our fingers crossed from that point. And our time came up on the screen, and we qualified, and we were fine. And then as we were going through kit collection and back through to warm up, we had a chat with the coach who said, look, there's been a someone's put a claim in that you were out the box. So at the moment, you're not through to the final, you've been DQ'd. But luckily, Welsh Athletics were so prepared for the Commonwealth Games. They'd taken out video cameras and everything, and they'd set someone up on every changeover with a camera. And they had all the footage that they needed to show that we weren't out the box. So at this point, I think India were in the final, and then they showed all the footage to the deciders, and they were happy that we weren't out the box. So then India were then taken out the final, and we were put in the final. So obviously it was gutting for India, but really good for us. Yeah. And this was like all happening at like 9:30 at night. So then we got the bus back to the village, quick bit of food, got to bed, and just prepped for the next day. And then the final came, and we just said, right, we're here now. We had lane 1, I think we had, which isn't ideal, but it can still be running. So we just said, let's just enjoy it, see what we can do. And we came away with a 7th place in a national record, which was quite cool in the final. So yeah, we were really happy with that after all the commotion that we've been through.
Well, that sounds like quite the experience. I mean, emotional roller coaster doesn't really cut it. But the just going back, I mean, this is for me in terms of more than anything. But when you say what difference does the lane selection make in athletics, and why is that such an important factor?
I think a lot of people do see it as an important factor. I try and not think of it as an important factor, because at some point you're going to have a rubbish lane that you need to run in. So yeah. I try and put the positives on it, and the positives, I guess, are that you're in lane 1, so you can see everything else that's going on outside you, and you've got people to chase down. And that worked really well for me in terms of, we had, I think, Barbados in lane 2 or something. And I just ran down the Barbados girl. I just thought, right, just got to catch it. It doesn't matter how fast she is, I'm going to catch her. But when you think about the lane draws and what sort of effect it can have on your race, because the bend is just so tight that if you're just a tall person, so if Hannah Thomas, who's like 5'11", had been running on 3rd leg instead of me, she would have really struggled. It's just so tight, and it's so difficult to sort of get the turnover going. It really chops down your stride. So I'm quite lucky that I'm quite short, and it didn't do too much damage to me. But no, it is something that a lot of sprinters do sort of sometimes let get in their head. I think that the lane can be a tricky one, and usually the ideal lanes to go for, the ideal lanes that you would like, are 4, 5, 6, 7. But yeah, you don't really want to get drawn with 1, 2, 3, or 8, I guess.
And that's just because of space available and all the rest of it. Is that predominantly why?
Yeah, so if you're lane 8, you can't see anyone and you're running a little bit blind and scared. But that 1, 2, and 3 are just so tight and so unforgiving, I would say, to your stride length.
Interesting. That's amazing. And in terms of, so after post Commonwealth Games, what was the plan? Like, when did bobsleigh come on the horizon? How did that materialize itself? Obviously the crossover for most people is evident in terms of you have to be fast. Did you finish the Commonwealth Games kind of raring to go back into another athletic season, or how did that work?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was like the plan, and that was sort of what happened. So I finished 2014. I was really happy with how we'd done, and sort of wanted to progress on from that. And training again went really well through that winter. And 2015, I was just really excited to race outdoors and see if I could improve on my PB. And just like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I don't know what happened, but I just felt terrible. And I came down with this virus, and the doctors don't know what virus it was. They said it was something similar to glandular fever, but it just caused me to just have these terrible cramps all the time. So I'd just get cramps in my hands, hamstrings, feet, everything. I'd just cramp up. I couldn't run very far. The furthest I could run was 30 meters, which if you tell that to a sprinter, they'd be really happy. But
Yeah.
at the time, I wasn't very happy. And I was just really out of breath. And I suppose as a result of that, I put on a bit of weight, and I just wasn't running as fast, and it just wiped out my 2015 season. And I guess that sort of started. I went on a weather camp in 2015, and that would have been in April time, and it started from that point. I was out in Arizona, and the training camp was going really well, and it was all like the last 2 days this started, and it just went all through the summer. And the effects of that and sort of the aftermath of that continued through the winter and into 2016, where again it just wasn't, my training wasn't sort of where I wanted it to be. I wasn't able to do the reps that I wanted, and it was just really frustrating. And then to go out and race in 2016, again, I wasn't getting the results I wanted, and I was just gutted. And it's so frustrating when you love something so much, but it's not quite showing when you're doing the races and you're doing the competitions. So I think around the summer of 2016, like early summer, I had a friend in the bobsleigh team called Judah, who I had known through athletics for a long time, and I'd been on warm weather camps with him years before. And he messaged me and he said, "Oh, he'd been doing bobsleigh, and he said, we've got some bobsleigh trials if you'd like to come along and try it." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm in terrible shape at the minute, Judah." And he said, "Well, that's perfect. We don't run very far, and you're a little bit heavy, so that's great for bobsleigh." So he sort of put a positive spin on my bad situation. And I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a go. And I went down for some trials in Birmingham. And it was at the High Pack in Birmingham. So there was one other girl there, and there was about 8 boys who were trialing out as well. And we had to do a 60-meter sprint to show how fast we were. We had to push a roll bob, which is just like it's like a steel, it's like a fake bobsleigh on wheels, basically. And then we had to do a plyometric test, so just like 5 double leg bounds into sand for your distance. And the trials went really well, and my score landed me literally just below their best score ever. So I thought, oh, that's quite cool. And I was quite happy that sort of I'd been able to do something well, because I hadn't really done that for a few months. So I went home. My dad was there when I'd done the trial, and I went home and we had the chat around it, and he was like, "Oh, this is cool, isn't it? You could do quite well in this." So I got invited back then for some more testing against the current bobsleigh girls, and there was about 6 or 7 of them there. And again, I still hadn't had any training, specific bobsleigh training yet. I just had to test against them. And I did that, and I came first in that testing, which was really cool. So from that point, I sort of thought, oh, well, you know, this is a really great opportunity to sort of make something of a bad situation. If I'm not particularly enjoying athletics at the moment, then maybe there's an opportunity for me somewhere elsewhere. And after I'd done that testing, the coaches had a sit down and a chat with me and sort of said, we've got some more testing. They love the testing. We've got some more testing in about 6 weeks' time. So they have a push track at Bath where they where it's literally, it looks like a roller coaster. If you go and look at it, it's like a slope, and you just push the bobsleigh down it, and then you get to the end of it and the bobsleigh comes back up, and it's just on wheels. And they said you can come down and train there over the next 6 weeks as much as you'd like to, and then we'd like you to do our push testing against all our current girls, and that will allow you to sort of compete for your spot on the British team. So for the next 6 weeks, I just did as much training as I could. Obviously, I live in Cardiff, so I drive across to Bath as much as possible, and just like work on my push technique. And then the training came, and the testing came, sorry, and it went really well, and I won the testing by like a good margin. So they said that meant that I was going to go on season. I was really naive to it all. I was just like, oh wow, that's so cool, thanks. And I don't think it had like entered my mind that I was then going to be sliding down ice, and this, like, it was quite a big deal. But yeah, so that was probably like mid-July, and they said in 2 weeks you're going to go away to Canada. So I had to, so I've never ever been anywhere cold, so I had to start stocking up on like gloves and hats and everything, and panic buying, and flew out to Canada and had my first bobsleigh race out there in Calgary, which is where a lot of people will know this, where Cool Runnings was filmed. Yeah, so that's the track that everyone remembers,
of course.
So I stood there, and then we went, so then I was on World Cup then, and I was just touring around North America and Canada, and then we came back then at Christmas time, and we were going to go around Europe after Christmas. So yeah, it all happened very, very quickly, and I think that was a good thing, because if I'd had time to sit and think about it, I probably wouldn't have done it. But no, it was really cool.
I mean, that's probably something that, like, just being naive to it and kind of not being as aware of what's going on, you're probably able to just find a lot more joy in the sport, and just take it for a kind of quite a different but fun activity that actually you're quite good at. And I've got so in terms of, obviously you've then made the kind of the World Cup kind of series and all that kind of stuff. Was that as a senior, or was that as a junior?
So it was as a senior, but bobsleigh's a little bit confusing, because you're classed as a junior until your 26th birthday, because you start so late, so they have to sort of push the boundaries back in terms of age groups. So in my first year with Misha, my pilot, very confusing, Mica.
Yeah.
So yeah, as in our first year, so when we went on that Europe tour after Christmas, we competed in the World Junior Championships, and we won the World Junior Championships. So we were both juniors, but we also competed as seniors.
Right,
so
it's
slightly confusing.
And then, so I mean, obviously, how different is it from kind of the dry track in Bath compared to all of a sudden being just flown out to Canada, and then just, here's ice, off you go?
Yeah.
Like?
Oh yeah, it's something that's something I found really difficult. I think I am a bit of a scaredy cat.
Really?
I don't like roller coasters. I don't like heights. I mean, I came home yesterday. I didn't know my boyfriend was in the house, and I screamed when he was in the bedroom. I'm just the biggest scared cat. So I think that was the most difficult part for me, was that I love the push track at Bath. I'd go there every day if I could. It's so much fun. And that sort of element of, it's just like the extreme side of power and speed put together. You're just running down a hill with a 190 kilo sled, sort of dragging you, and you have to keep up with it. It's really cool. But I think when you put it on ice, it adds that element of danger that I'm not necessarily comfortable with.
Right, okay.
So when I did my first race in Calgary, it was really fun. And then as we sort of progressed through the tracks and went around on the tour, we came to a track called Whistler, which is the fastest track in the world. You go up to 94 miles an hour on it. It's pretty crazy. And it's, when you watch bobsleigh, it's beautiful. It's really cool. But when you're in the back of the sled, it's quite scary. And we did have a crash at Whistler. Just before we flew home for Christmas, and that was just one of the scariest things that's ever happened, because it wasn't on film anywhere, so I don't have any sort of visual that I can sort of say, okay, it doesn't look as bad as it felt. So now I've only got those feelings of me sort of going around like I'm in a washing machine and just screaming at the top of my voice. It's a crash isn't very fun. It's you wear a burns vest in bobsleigh, and that protects you, and obviously you've got your helmet on. But when the bobsleigh crashes, there's not a lot you can do except for hold on as tight as you can, because the safest place to be is in the sled. You don't sort of want to let go and then something get caught on the sled, or you hurt yourself when you're falling out the sled. So, but when you're in the sled, you can feel your back getting hot on the ice, even though you've got this burns vest on. So you're trying to sort of move it between your shoulder and your head. And the ice is, although it's very smooth, it's still a little bit bumpy. So when you put your head on the ice and you can feel the bumps, then you can sort of feel that get into your brain almost. And it's just, it's just a very scary 50 seconds. So that was something I did struggle with. And I think that obviously my dad being my coach, he still remained my coach throughout bobsleigh, but he wasn't there. Yeah. So I would call him quite a lot and just speak to him a lot about sort of worries and fears and how to get over them. And luckily he was very helpful and managed to get me through it all. But no, that was something that was definitely one of my sort of, I guess, like a kryptonite in bobsleigh.
I mean, I was one of the next questions that I wanted to ask is about like how trying to sell bobsleigh as a sport to someone that's never done it before, and well, I suppose making them aware of the kind of the crashes. But in terms of, is there a kind of is it literally in terms of the development program within British bobsleigh, is it something that they will kind of not handpick necessarily, but they pull upon sprinters and other sports that have that kind of direct transfer over it, and then obviously convert them? Or is there a junior program where you as an 11-year-old can go to somewhere like Bath and sample it as a kind of a junior version of the sport? How does that work in that sense? Is it possible? Or
I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because you do have to be older to start bobsleigh, but it is a bit of a shame that I don't think there is that sort of junior pathway or that grassroots pathway into bobsleigh. I think the oldest sort of person that you would get starting is like 16, 17. Right. And even then, that would probably be for monobob, which is single person bobsleigh, which isn't as big, but it is going to be in the Olympics soon. So now it is becoming bigger. But in terms of myself, yeah, it was just that testing day that I'd heard about. And I know that there is other options and other routes into bobsleigh, such as they do this sort of, I can't remember what its name is. It's like Going for Gold or something like that, yeah. Where you get tested for loads of different sports and they sort of put you into those. So whether it be cycling or bobsleigh or rowing, they would sort of test your attributes against that, and that's another route in. But no, there isn't that grassroots way in. And I know my driver Mica, she just bobsleigh was her first sport, and she started that when she was about 17. So I think that it's quite cool for someone who hasn't sort of found their sport yet to just go straight into it. But I think there should be more of a grassroots level into it as well.
Yeah, it's obviously difficult, and I think this is the kind of thing, particularly having worked in and around sport, is just kind of driving awareness to, particularly in more minority sports, someone like this, a lot of the sports that I work with, Olympic weightlifting, fencing, I do work in athletics at the moment, but then obviously that's a bit more of a majority sport, but then you have these kind of more winter-based sports, and seeing the impact of like these minority sports have had on the people's lives, because you can not necessarily find yourself in your traditional team-based sports, your footballs, your rugbies, and athletics to some extent, which I've seen people kind of try and fail in athletics, but obviously the transfer of skills and physical attributes, as you say, into some other kind of individual sports that are kind of a bit more kind of niche, like, it's huge. And then all of a sudden, like, I've seen people find Olympic weightlifting as an example, and they've gone on to kind of, well, to go to the Commonwealth Games. I think that kind of, if we can draw the more attention that you can kind of draw to both winter sports, because it provides a fantastic opportunity, as well as other minority sports, it's going to do nothing but benefit sport, Team GB, and the whole kind of Olympic pathway as a whole. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. One of the things that I wanted to talk with you about, because you got before the Olympic Games, if I'm right, you had issues with your funding. Is this right?
Yeah.
So what happened there?
So when we'd finished our 2016-2017 season, we went back to training. We started training at Bath over summer, and we were really excited to sort of see if we could push for that Olympic Games, because we were sort of on track for it. As a break woman, it's quite a difficult position to be in, because although I'm on the back of the sled, my spot at the Games isn't certain whatsoever. So the way that you would put it in bobsleigh is the sled has qualified for the Games. Mica, being the only woman pilot, had qualified for the Games, and because there wasn't anyone else, and because she's a really good pilot, of course. Yeah. But and then for myself, there was still 5 other brake women who were fighting for that one spot on the back of the sled. So although I was number 1 brake woman at the time, I still had to prove myself in testing, like, on numerous occasions, and I still had to show that I was competitive in that position. So we were training over the summer, and it came to 2 weeks before the season, so maybe a week before testing, really, and we found out that there had been an overspend in British bobsleigh. They called us in for a meeting, and I wasn't able to go in for the meeting, but I Skyped into the call, and they told us that there'd been an overspend in British bobsleigh of, I think, about £100,000 or maybe £1 million. I think that's quite a difference. A lot of money. Yeah. And it meant that they were going to have to cut the women's programme, and their reasoning behind that was because the men had more of a medal potential. But that's fine to say if it's true, because it wasn't quite true. We had an equal opportunity of medal potential, the women and the men. So it seemed really unfair and unjust that they cut the women's programme. And obviously every girl there felt that, you know, we could really push for the Olympic Games and to send this sled to the Olympic Games. And we sort of asked, okay, so what is the next step? And they said, well, we're not going to be able to send you on season, and we're not going to be able to support you. So that is the last step, really. Luckily, we don't really just take no as an answer, I guess. And we thought of everything that we could do to sort of raise some money, because it probably costs around £30,000 to send a sled on season, like minimum. So we started thinking how we could raise that money. We thought about all the different options, car wash and different things like that. Probably not going to raise enough. But Misha put together a GoFundMe page, and it sort of just blew up from there, really. And the page got shared by BBC, and then it got shared by everyone. Every newspaper you could think of sort of started sharing this story, and I think it was definitely because of the reasons behind it and sort of their reasonings for it. I think that women in sport is a really great movement at the moment, and I think that we were very blessed that that is happening at this time, and our story sort of linked in with that, I guess. And because people are just nice people, and we're able to share the story as well. But it really spread like wildfire, and people started donating to the page, and I kept sort of checking it on my phone, because I train in the evenings at like 6:30, and like every evening I'd be at training, I'd sort of like refresh the page, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, someone's just made a really big donation. And it would just keep going up and up, and after 6 days, I remember refreshing it at training at like 8:30 or something like that, and it'd gone over the £30,000, and I was like, oh my god, we're going on season. It happened so quickly.
Wow.
And it was really amazing. So that meant that we were able to sort of book our flights to North America, fly out. We did pretty much everything that we needed to and wanted to, and that money sort of paid for accommodation, shipping the sled, food for us, hotels, Airbnbs, and it actually made things a lot better, because we were able, I mean, no disrespect against British Bobsleigh, but when you're part of an association like that, sometimes they just book whatever's the cheapest and whatever, where you can fit 15 people in the same hotel. So we were able to book Airbnbs where we could make our own food, and we could, do everything. We could have a physio in and bring the physio to the hotel or the room and do whatever like that. So it actually worked really well, and we were able to go on season. And then in December, that's when my testing. So I had to do all of that and all that fundraising, which I would have done regardless, but I had to sort of do all that without knowing that I was going to the games, and I wouldn't find out if I was going to the games until December. So I raced all through September to December, and then I had to test against the other girls in December, and to secure my spot, and thankfully it went really well, and I secured my spot as the brakewoman for the games then. And then we went to Pyeongchang.
Amazing. And do you remember kind of so in terms of the testing and stuff, was it kind of there and then, or did you kind of do your testing and then you got an official call? How did it all work?
Well, it's quite a difficult one, because with the testing, you push on the push track and there's a clock and you can see the times coming up.
Yeah.
So I was really nervous for testing, because about 2 weeks before it, I'd gone to the push track, because it is very different pushing on the push track to ice. So I'd gone to the push track to train and practice, and it was shocking. And I was like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. I've put in all this work and it's not going to go right. And my push times are just not what I knew I was capable of. And it's tricky, because I'd been on season and the other girls hadn't raced. So there's pros and cons to racing. You're racing and you're getting practice in, but you're also putting your body through quite a lot of taxing effort and sort of bruises and bumps. And my body was sort of being held together by K-tape at the time. I just had a sore back and a sore Achilles and all these things. So I was just trying to get through it all, really. But no, I'd seen the times when I'd gone to practice and I just wasn't particularly happy with them. But when it came to the push testing day, you see the times coming up on the clock and you can sort of work out your positioning within that as well. So I knew that I knew that I'd ranked first in the push testing, and then you sort of just have to wait for a call to come through. Yeah. So
when the call comes through.
Well, where was I? We were actually in, oh gosh, where is that? All the tracks look the same, so I'm trying to figure out where we were. We were somewhere in Europe, and I think it might have been Altenburg in Germany when the call came through. And I remember talking to Chris, who was the head of British Bobsleigh at the time, and he said, "I'm sure you know this, but you've qualified for the Olympics." And I was like, "Oh, are you sure?" I don't want to change your mind, but no, it's really nice, and it's really nice to get calls like that. And you do get a bit emotional, I guess, because it all just builds up to that point, but then you think, oh God, it's now got to build even more from here, and there's so much more to come, and you sort of have to level your head out again because there's still more work to do. But no, it's just nice. It's nice to sort of, it just settles the nerves, and you can sort of enjoy it from there then.
What was the Olympic experience like apart from being colder than Glasgow? What was there much difference between the kind of the athlete experience from the kind of a home nation Commonwealth Games versus a Winter Olympics?
Yeah, I would say it was. I think the Olympics was just really lonely. I think because you're so far from home. I was really lucky. My parents and my boyfriend flew out, but they were only there for a few days, and I couldn't really see them because the size of the site in Pyeongchang was quite big, and they stayed down on the coast, which again was maybe another 45-minute drive.
Yeah.
So they couldn't just come up easily. But it was so cold that people didn't really leave their rooms that much unless it was to eat or to do your laundry. I mean, obviously me and Misha and Montel, we were all a team out there with the team within the team sort of thing. So that was really nice. And we were in an apartment with a ski cross athlete, a snowboard cross athlete, and then some other skiers. And that was nice to be able to mix with other sports because when you're on season, you don't get to do that at all. Team GB made the apartments really, really homely. They tried to like put the flag everywhere and just make it really cozy. And they had like a little living room where you could watch other events every night and cheer people on, which I thought was really nice. But no, I thought it was just quite lonely out there. I did think that, and sort of did miss like my family and miss home because the time difference as well. You just forget about all these things that add up to it. Like you can't just talk to your friends easily, and you just forget about all these things that sort of will make a difference when you're actually there. So yeah, and just every time I had to go and train, you just have to layer up so much. And I knew it was going to be cold there, but when you have to just put 3 pairs of leggings on and then like salopettes on top, and just you can't afford for any of your skin to be on show because it's just so cold. I remember going sliding one day, and oh no, I wasn't sliding. So if you're not sliding, you just help out with sleds and move the sleds and do all sort of the manual labor like that. And Judah, who got me into bobsleigh, was there, and he was like, "Oh my God, your eyelashes are frozen." And I had little icicles on my eyelashes. It was just, yeah, I didn't think it would be that cold there. But although all that being said, obviously it was an incredible experience and amazing to be able to go somewhere like that, because I wouldn't have done that without being part of all that. So yeah, that was I guess like the main amazing bit.
Yeah, obviously it's just the byproduct of a lot of hard work by the sounds of things. And then the competition day itself, did it kind of go as planned? It was a smoother ride than what it sounds like the Commonwealth Games was?
Yeah, so the competition day went really well. We competed late at night, so I suppose the hardest bit was just chilling out throughout the day, because there's not a lot to do when you're in an Olympic village, there isn't really a lot to do unless, I don't know, you've taken like a Game Boy or something, but I didn't. But yeah, throughout the day, we just tried to relax. So I think we got up really late for breakfast. And then we were like, we planned our meals. So we were like, let's go for a meal. Like, let's have brunch. Then we'll have like lunch. Then we'll have an afternoon snack. And we just tried to like fill our day with food, basically. We switched off on social media because we felt like we wanted to focus, because there had sort of been quite a good following up until that point. And obviously we were really grateful for that, but we didn't want to sort of be having to reply to messages and, you know, thank for support while we were trying to concentrate. So I think that was the best sort of idea that we had, really. And then you go to the track like 4 hours ahead of time just to get everything sorted. And actually, in fairness, Pyeongchang track was probably one of my favorites because they had cookies in the athletes lounge. So we were always keen to get there early to make sure we got some cookies. Nice. But yeah, the competition went really well. My parents and family were there, and Misha's family were there as well. And that was really, really nice, and I think really benefited us, because when you're on Bobsleigh season, obviously no one's families can follow them around everywhere we go. And I think my dad's watched me once and Kurt's watched me once, but my mum has never watched me live. Did worry about mum watching it live, so I said to her, come up to the start and watch from there, because I thought, just in case anything happens. She doesn't want to see me like rolling past on my head. So I told them to stand up at the start line, and that was really nice to have them there, because I could hear them shouting, and you could hear them shouting, go GB, go Mica. And so I've never had that before on the start line, because wherever we are, it's usually that nation's supporters that are there. So if we're in Germany, it's always going to be just packed full of German people, or if you're in Canada, it's always full of Canadians. So yeah, it was really nice to hear like a welcoming voice in the crowd.
Amazing. And obviously, I mean, like I say, it was the best ever by a British women's team, bobsleigh team. I mean, that's quite the outcome, and that's quite something to have on your CV. Do you think, is there any plans to obviously ever go back to it, or?
Well, it's really difficult to say. I think that at the moment, I'm really happy with how I done in my time in bobsleigh. I was in it for a very short time, 2 years, but it was also a very turbulent time, I guess. Lots happened within it. So I think I'm really proud of myself for sort of not sort of backing down when things had gone wrong, like the funding. Not being too scared to not do it, because I was very scared most of the time. So I was really happy. And I think that when we did that final run, because obviously the Olympics was over 2 days, so we did 2 runs one day and the final 2 runs the second. And on that final run, there was just this feeling of just like, like it's almost like I've completed it when I'd done that final run.
Yeah, I get that.
And when I went back to the push track in the summer, it wasn't quite the same, and I almost felt like I didn't want to do another race on ice in case it wasn't the same as the Olympics. And I knew it wouldn't be the same because I've done it in athletics. So, you know, I've done the Commonwealth Games and then gone back and raced an open meet in Neath, and it's not the same.
No.
So I kind of didn't want that to happen with bobsleigh. And then I was offered like a really cool opportunity to do a course at Cardiff Met. And I sort of thought, well, maybe this is an opportunity to take on another challenge and see where that takes me.
And best people go to Cardiff Met.
Yes, they do. They do, obviously. But yeah, it was really cool to be able to do something like that. That's again quite out my comfort zone, because although we'd done lots of interviews with bobsleigh, I've never sort of been on that side of things where I'm the interviewer and doing sort of live broadcasts and things like that. So
you're just for the listeners, you're doing what are you doing at Cardiff Met? What's the masters you do?
So it's a master's in sports broadcasting. So I guess everything to do with TV, radio, podcasts, anything that you can think of like that that's sporty. We learned about all of that, and it was a 16-month course that I'm still doing because I have a I like to defer a course or two. So
Well, you've got a lot on. You've got a lot on. So obviously Cardiff Met and finishing your masters, and then what does life look like? Is there still an athletics career in there, or?
Yes, definitely. I think that the nice thing about bobsleigh is that it taught me how much I just love athletics. Even though things weren't going right when I sort of joined bobsleigh, I still loved it, and I still do love it. And I think that what my hope, when I finished bobsleigh, what my hopes were is just, I just wanted to go back to athletics and enjoy athletics, and that was my goal. Just enjoy it. Don't worry about what place you come. Don't worry about where you're ranked. Just enjoy sport for what it is, because you're getting relatively old now, so you don't know how long you've got left in sport. And that was my mindset from when I sort of stepped away from bobsleigh, and I just had to learn to love the sport again. And I think that I've started doing that, and with that comes better results. And I think that it's just something that bobsleigh's helped with, is just my mindset. It's helped me be a lot more positive and sort of deal with difficult times a lot easier. And it's also just made me not scared of hard work, I guess, because bobsleigh is really tough. It's tough on the body, it's tough on the mind. You have to just keep pushing through even when you're sore. And I think that sometimes as athletes, I think I'll just suppose be honest around athletes, that we can be a little bit of a diva at times, and we don't want to put in those hard sessions, and we might say, oh, it's, I don't want to run 200 meters, but I think that bobsleigh's really helped with that. And now I think I'm a lot stronger in my mind, and with that positive outlook, it's really helping my results, I hope.
Amazing. And so you've just come off the back of a very successful indoor season. Is there a word of kind of, will there be a back end of an outdoor season at all, do you know yet, or?
Oh gosh, I really hope so. I do hope so. I understand that obviously health is like massive priority, and everybody's health is a massive priority. I would love to have a little bit of a run out at the end of the season. It would be really cool to be able to do that, because I suppose from everyone's point of view, everyone's put in a long slog of a winter and hard work, and it would just be nice to just do one race. And I think that would at the moment, that would be the cherry on the cake, just to do one race. Yeah. If that's not an opportunity, then at the moment I'm still training as if there is a summer season, because I think that's what I just feel like that's what my body needs right now, to go back into more winter prep, and like those long hard sessions I don't think would necessarily work for me. So I'm just trying to replicate as if I would have raced. And then I guess in September, if there has been no races, then I'll have a little bit of time off, and then I'll go back into winter training again and ready for indoors. I mean, for me, if there isn't an outdoor season, I do really enjoy indoors, so it's not too bad. I'm not one of those athletes that doesn't like the indoor season, so it'll be exciting to sort of wait and see what 2021 has to offer.
Amazing. And then beyond that, is there any kind of, in 2021, is there any kind of nationals and all that kind of stuff? Will that all be on the cards, or is it just kind of, how are you still pitching it at that kind of enjoyment level of just any meet to meet type thing?
I don't specifically know of any competitions that I'm sort of aiming towards. I think there is still that element of just enjoying it and seeing what I can get out of sort of the last few years of competition. I think the long-term goal is Birmingham Commonwealth Games. It would probably be a really nice sort of closing competition for me. I think that my indoor season has shown that with the proper training and being able to train properly, I mean, with bobsleigh, I wasn't able to do as much training as I do in sprinting and as much quality training either. So I think it's shown that if I can just have a season of good training, then I can get back into that form that I was in. And I'm hoping that I can just keep building on that. I guess in terms of my short-term goals, it's just sort of just keep improving. And as long as I'm still improving and as long as I'm still enjoying it, then I'll probably carry on.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like like I say, you refer to kind of a closing, like a closing kind of statement, but then at the same time, as if you're kind of well beyond your years, but you're a couple of years younger than I am. You're 27 still, and it's to kind of gone through everything that you've kind of achieved in the past hour or so is certainly kind of, that definitely kind of puts it into perspective. In order to close, just asking a couple of things, just the kind of asking everyone, in terms of, because we are obviously very much in lockdown and isolation, there's just 3 questions that we're asking. If there is one meal that you could eat for the whole time in isolation, what would that be? Say breakfast, lunch and dinner for 3 weeks.
Oh, for breakfast too. Oh wow. What, the same meal for breakfast, lunch and dinner?
Yeah.
See, if you'd said if it was just for dinner every day, then that would be easy. But for breakfast, lunch and dinner, I think it would probably be do you know what? It would probably be porridge with Nutella.
Yeah.
Because I really like porridge with Nutella. Breakfast is my favourite meal, and I look forward to breakfast. I wake up and I'm like, oh, I can eat now, and I'm just so happy. So maybe I would go for porridge with Nutella.
Yeah, well, I think I would be something along the same lines. In terms of everyone's time in isolation, if there is one thing that you could recommend someone should watch, what would that be?
Oh, we just binge watched. Actually, no, I'm going to change my recommendation would be anything Disney, because I do love Disney. Everyone knows I like Disney. And if you want a specific film, one of my favorites is Pocahontas, I guess. So you could give Pocahontas a watch.
Amazing. I'm massively with you on the Disney front. That's definitely my kind of jam. And then, what is your one act of, I mean, where we're kind of calling it is like self-care. So obviously it's a time where, like, what is the one thing that you are going to do to keep yourself sane during the next 3 weeks?
Keeping myself sane, apart from exercise, keeping myself sane, what do? I like to just sing sometimes, and I usually just put on, I don't know, a good playlist on Spotify. It doesn't matter how bad you sing. If you turn the music up loud enough, no one will hear you.
I love it. Well, that's 3. They're probably basically the same 3 answers that I would have given anyway. So, well, I really, really appreciate your time, and hopefully everyone has enjoyed it. And obviously, the final thing is, where can people see more of you? Where can they follow you, and all this kind of stuff?
Well, the place I spend most of my time is on Instagram, which is at MicaLM92, and I have really sort of stupidly just downloaded TikTok.
Oh, nice.
And I am spending way too much time on there, but I usually upload all of those to Instagram anyway.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll post it in the description as well, so they can find you there. But thank you very much for your time, and then hopefully people will have enjoyed this, and we'll see them all on the kind of the next episode. But thank you.
That's okay, Callum. Thank you very much.